We're holding 3 lines from the top where it says V'hine Geder. But before we do that, I want to address a question that was asked last week, which I said I would respond to this week, and which actually is a segue and will lead into the topic of today. Nuruvan, you remember what the question was?
No, I remember. I should have reviewed this.
Okay.
Maybe have a little recap.
A little recap. So last week we spoke about the Malchus of Hashem, which is, in terms of the names of Hashem, that is the name Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, what we are calling the name of Adonai. Because up until this point, we're talking the whole time about how the world is completely bottled to its source. And what is the source of the world? The source of the world is the Dvar Hashem, Dasar Mamaris. Now we're moving away for a moment from the world, and we want to talk a little about the Asar Mamaris themselves. We want to talk about the Dvar Hashem. What is the Madriga? The level of Alakus, the level of godliness, which is the source of the worlds. So last week we explained that that is the name of Adonai, which is Hashem's Malchus, because as we explained, Ein Melach B'lei Am, you can't have a king without having a nation, and therefore the whole world and all the worlds and all of creation is a result of Hashem's Malchus, Hashem's desire, his deep-seated desire. He wants to be a Melech. And as we said last week, that a Melech requires a Am, and a Am is Malashon Oimemois, embers of coals that are not burning. They're smoldering, you might want to say, but they're not burning. So in order for Hashem to be a Melech, he needs to have an entity, something which is separate from him. So therefore this whole world is a result of Hashem's Malchus, which is the name Adonai, which implies the idea of Hashem being a Adon, the master and the Melech over the world. So someone asked last week, that until now we were saying that the creation of the world is from Midas HaChesed in combination together with Midas HaDin, Chesed and Gevurah. Chesed is the Gilui of Hashem, and Gvura is the Koyach HaHelam, the Koyach HaTzimtzum, and the Koyach which is master, which conceals and allows for something which is to be considered a Davar Nifrad, a Davar Yesh, and a Davar Nifrad. Davar Bifnei Atzmai. So why is it? So how suddenly now, and those two are represented respectively by the names of Havaya and Elikim. Havaya is Hashem's Midas HaChesed, and Elikim is Hashem's Midas HaGvura. And suddenly here we're throwing a wrench into this whole thing, and we're saying no, the creation is from Shem Adonai, which is the Sphira of Malchus. So again, 3 spheres corresponding to 3 of Hashem's names, Chesed, Gevura, and Malchus, corresponding to Havaya, Elikim, and Adonai. But where does this Adonai come from? Where does Malchus come from? Until now we're talking about Chesed and Gevura.
Maybe you need all 3. Maybe he wants all 3.
Ich verstehe, but we have to understand, why do we need all 3? What is that all about? The Kudah is like this. In Tikkunei Zohar, we've talked about this in the past, when it talks about all the midas, all Hashem's spheres, all Hashem's midas, it says Chesed, Vehaemunah. Chesed is Hashem's right hand, and Gevurah is Dreyasmala. Gevurah is Hashem's left arm, and then he continues, and then he says, Yisoid Seyuma de Gufa. Yisoid, the sphere of Yisoid, is the end of the body. And then there's Malchus, and Malchus, and Tikkunei Zohar says, Malchus is Peh. Malchus is the mouth. Malchus corresponds to speech. But for whatever reason, Yisoid is considered the end of the body. Why is Yisoid the end of the body if there's Malchus afterwards? Why isn't Malchus the end? We have 10 spheres. Yisoid is sphere number 9. The 10th sphere is Malchus. So Malchus is Siyuma de Gufa, is the end of the body. Why are we saying Yisoid is the end of the body?
Well, what do you say the end of the body? There's supposed to be, it has the toughness of an Odom. Malchus, I think, was the top, right?
Malchus is the mouth.
Left and right. And
Malchus is the mouth. Yisoid are the reproductive organs. Yisoid is Ois Bris Kodesh. Yeah. That's not Siyuma de Gufa. Even if you're talking physically, Yisoid is not the it's the end of the torso. But we have to understand this in a more in a spiritual way. You know, last week we spoke about the idea of Malchus, that Ein Melach B'lei Am. You can have a person who is a Adam HaShalom, person who is a complete person, a wonderful person, a wise person, a scholarly person, with incredible midos tovos, and nevertheless, such a person cannot claim to be a melech unless he has subjects.
Disciples.
Sorry?
Disciples.
Subjects. Disciples is something more of a Rav and a Talmud, but a melech is we're talking about with a nation. So to be very clear, personal perfection is achieved 100% without Malchus. You can have a person who's a perfect person. Nevertheless, he's not a melech. Why? Because a melech is not about personal perfection. A melech is about one's behavior relative to entities outside of himself.
How about being a person, be a Moshe Atzmo? That's part of his perfection. In order to
leave that alone. That's not a melech. So again, a melech is someone we're talking about someone who is ruling over people and influencing people outside of himself. That is the definition of a melech. Similarly, when it comes to human being, what's interesting is that we are called medaber. Our species is called people who speak. But think about it for a second. Someone who lacks the ability to speak, whether pashut physically, or someone pashut, they're not necessarily a good communicator. You can have a person who is a perfect person. There's nothing wrong with the person. The person isn't missing anything. He's an Adam HaShalom. He's perfect in all ways. He's a brilliant person, and he's Baal Midas Tovos and everything. Can't speak. Now, is that a personal flaw? Does that impact? Is that a lack in shleimus? No, not a lack in shleimus. The fact that other people have it, okay, so that doesn't mean it's a lack in shleimus. It just means this is a impediment in a person's ability to relate to others. Nothing to do with a person's personal integrity and person's shleimus, a person's personal completion.
Yet lo kam Yisrael k'mo she'od.
what is it?
Yeah.
And he was ultimate leader.
Okay. You're saying that he stuttered.
Well, they say now just Megam Gem B'Dibur, but also he didn't feel himself capable of speaking on behalf of him. He ultimately was given the power, but natively speaking, he was born without that inherent capacity.
Oh, you want to show him that?
Okay, let's talk about Moshe. These are all side questions. Let's leave them to the side. So we see right over here, we see a parallel between Malchus and Dibur. We said earlier, the Zohar says Malchus Peh. What's the parallel between Malchus and Dibur? Is that both of them are not about personal shleimus, personal stature, but rather about one's ability to relate to others. Ein melech b'lei am, that a king needs to have subjects, otherwise he's not a king. So a king is about relationship with others outside of oneself. And the same thing is Dibur also. Dibur also is about a person's capacity to relate to people outside of him or herself. And in fact, there's a pasuk, B'dvar melech shiltain, which means the king rules by way of his speech, which also indicates this connection, this relationship between royalty, between kingship and speech. What is the capacity of speech? So capacity of speech is the ability, whoever you are as an individual, whatever your perceptions, your awarenesses, your understandings, your feelings are, the ability to communicate them outward. If there's nothing inside, you have nothing to communicate. You know, there's a vart from the Frierdiker Rebbe on the Haggadah, Chacham Mahu Eimer, Rasha Mahu Eimer, Tam Mahu Eimer. He says, Chacham Mahu, Chacham, you want to know what he is? Eimer, see what he speaks. Rasha Mahu was a Rasha Eimer. In other words, why is that? A person is most evident. You look at a person, you know, it says that the Mishlei says that Gam Evil Machrish L'Chacham Yichashiv, that a fool, if he remains quiet, so people will think that he's wise. Such time Malchus said. So the joker said that the wisdom came to complain before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said that's no fair. So all the fool has to do is be quiet, and everyone think that it's wise, that he's wise. That's not fear to wise people. Stavisher said, don't worry, if he's a fool, he won't be able to be quiet. Yeah. Why is that? Because speech is nothing on its own. Speech is only the ability to funnel everything that's going on inside and be able to communicate it to others.
What Shlomo HaMelech said, Lo matzati something more than shtika.
That's Pirkei Avos. Yeah. So again, dibur, the capacity to speak is not. It's not a quality so much in and of its own as much as the ability to be able to convey everything, in other words, the 9 other spheres, chesed, your chachma, bina, das, chesed, gvura, teferes, to be able to try to communicate them and transmit them to others. And the same thing is with Malchus. What is Malchus? Malchus is the ability to be able to funnel a person's wisdom and midos and use that and to be able to use that in order to rule over, hopefully kindly and wisely, and to be able to govern over our country. So now we understand what it means. Yisoid siyuma de gufa. Yisoid is the end of the body. In other words, the person is made up of, the person's own personality is made up of 9 spheres. It ends with Yisoid. Chachma, bina, das, chesed, gvurat, tferes, netzachoid, and ends with Yisoid. Malchus is already after that. It's not about me. Malchus is about my ability to transmit who I am to someone else. I am complete without Malchus. I am complete without speech. If I never speak to anyone, no one can say I am not a complete person. You could say that I am denying other people what's going inside me, but there's a complete person. A person who's missing chesed is a deficient person. A person who's missing bina, for example, is a deficient person. A person who's missing netzach, the power to persevere, is a deficient person. A person who's missing malchus, speech, is not deficient. You know who's deficient? The people who can't hear him. They're the ones who are deficient. They're the ones who are missing out. So that's why Yisoid, Siyuma de Gufa, Yisoid is the end of the human personality, because afterwards malchus is the peh, is the mouth, is the ability to transmit. So there's me, there's everything that's going on inside me. And all the understandings I have and all the feelings I have. So one feeling that a human being has is chesed. Another feeling a person has is gvura. But that's all inside me. Until I communicate it to others, or until I act upon it, that's all me living inside me. And it's all about me. It's my feeling. I feel love. I feel fear. It's all about me. And then you have dibur is where it all is funneled outwards. It's all funneled outwards. Shem Havaya is Hashem's chesed. Hashem's midah of chesed. Shem Elikim is Hashem's gevura. But those are all as they exist within Hashem. Creation and actuality happens through Malchus, through dibur. Through dibur, through that Sarah Mamaris, and through Malchus, because Ein Malach Belayam. But how does Malchus create? Malchus doesn't have anything within itself. That's why we talk about the moon, for example. The moon corresponds to Malchus. Api Kabbalah. The moon corresponds to Malchus. That's why when we go into Kiddush Levana, we talk about David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, because the moon corresponds to Malchus, and with many other reasons also. The moon has no light of its own. The moon only gives off the light from the sun. Malchus also has nothing on its own. What is Malchus? Malchus is funneling all the inner powers of the king and using them to govern the nation. Malchus is a mechanism. It contains nothing of its own. Malchus, less law, in Kabbalistic terms, less law migarma klum. Malchus has nothing, like the moon. It has nothing. It has only that which it receives from the higher spheres, from Chachma, just like speech. If a person has no brains and has no feelings, there's nothing to communicate. There's nothing to say. Because speech is only drawing upon all the deeper energies. Malchus is creating the world. With Hashem's dibur is creating the world. But how is it creating the world? By funneling all the deeper energies. Malchus' ability to create the world is because it draws upon Hashem's chesed, which is infinite capacity for creation, and at the same time Malchus also draws upon Hashem's gevura, which is Hashem's power to be able to be master and to conceal. And both of those together are funneled through Malchus into actual creation. So that's why we have these 3 names. We have the name of Havaya and the name of Elikim. And then we also have the name of Adonai, which Hashem is Malchus. And someone asked, why do you need Adonai if you have those names? Because again, Havaya and Elikim are Hashem's midas. Midas are within. Midas are not yet They're not transmitted outward. For that, you need the dibur. For that, you need to have the Malchus of Hashem. So actual creation happens through Malchus, which is the name of Adonai. Very good. With that, we'll continue inside. 3 lines from the top of page Pei Beis, which is opposite of page 162. V'hinei Geder u'bechina shem olam. The classification of the concept of a world. What is a world? Neifel al bechinas makim u'bechinas zman dafka. The parameters of a world are space and time. Bechinas makim, space, hu mizrach u'mayrev, east and west, saf and darim, north and south, milo mata, above and below. And bechinas man, what is time? Is avar, hoive v'asid, is the past, the present, and the future. Those are the parameters of the world, the dimensions. Everything that exists within the parameters of space and time. And by the way, this isn't just true in the physical world, this is true even in spiritual worlds. Even though in spiritual worlds you can say, what kind of space is there in spiritual worlds? There's spiritual space. Meaning, what does space mean? Space means that this is here and this is not here. What makes this distinct from this is that this is here and this is there. They're occupying three-dimensionally. They're occupying different areas. In spiritual also, for example, Chesed and Gevura, they occupy different spaces. They're different things. So in the spiritual world also, you have the idea of space. Space is the idea of what we call Hischalkus, the fact that there's differentiation between one thing and another. The fact that two things can't, in this world, the fact that two things can't occupy the same space is what makes for differentiation. And in the spiritual worlds, there's also the differentiation of concepts. There's also the idea of time in spiritual worlds. If time implies the idea of cause and effect, with the cause preceding the effect, in the spiritual worlds also, you have cause and effect. So if you have cause and effect in the spiritual worlds, in effect, that is actually a spiritual concept of time.
You're saying there's spiritual rules.
In the spiritual worlds also, yes. These ideas, these concepts of time and space, these have no space. These do not exist in Hashem's midos. Only in Hashem's Malchus. Over there's the idea of time and space. Over there, Shaykh Leimar Shehu Yisbarach Melech L'mayla Adin Kates U'Lamata Adin Tachlis. There we can say Hashem, He's a king over the highest world and over the lowest world. So there's the idea of space. Vehaemunah Daled Sitrin. And Hashem's kingship, right? We say Aleph Ches Daled, the Echad, that Hashem's kingship, Amlichte, we have to make Hashem king over all the from the highest to the lowest and the four corners of the world. That's all in Malchus. The same thing when it comes to time. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech. That's all. The idea of time and space exists only in Hashem's Malchus. So it turns out the chayis of space, the life force of space and the life force of time, and their creation from nothing to something, and the fact that they exist, kolzman kiyumam, as long as they exist, is from Hashem's Malchus, v'shem adnus baruchu, and the idea of Hashem's rulership, the idea of Shem Adnai.
It's a little bit like the concept of time in a sense, a continuum. That in Hashem's Ma'at, like we said, Vayashem Melech HaKol Haaretz, that already is in effect.
Okay, that's about Mashiach. Yeah.
No, I'm not even talking about Zman Mashiach per se. I'm talking about the idea that his Malchus creates the dimension on which time can govern.
Correct. And in fact, as we shall see, the idea of time and space actually originate within Malchus. Up until Malchus, there really is no other. Just like in the human being, up until Dibur, it's all about yourself. So in all the spheres that are higher than Malchus, there we have only Hashem. That's all that exists. There might be other things. There might be other things, but everything is completely batal b'metzias Hashem, and all that's nirgash, all that's felt is Hashem. So the idea of time and space, which imply differentiation, and everything has its time and everything has its place. Pardon the pun, the expression. That is something which begins in Malchus. Why? Because in Malchus is already about creation. Ein melech b'lei am. Malchus is not about Hashem on his own terms. Malchus is Hashem already needing, so to say, kaviyachol, needing creation. So over there, creation and all of its elements already exist. So yes, time already exists and space already exists. The idea of differences within creation is important. For example, when it comes to a king,
that's before the creation. Before Malchus.
Even before the world is created, the moment that there is Malchus in Hashem, the moment that Hashem needs to be a king, the idea of, okay, let me for example, there's the idea of Bereiv Am Hadras Malach. Bereiv Am Hadras Malach. A king needs to be a king over many subjects. What does that tell you? That means that the amount of subjects makes a difference. And it's not only the king wants to have that some subjects should be wiser, because when there are people who are wise, who are faithful, loyal to the king, that tells you something about the king. But he also wants the simple people. They're also an important element of country building. So the otherness of everything that exists in Malchus. Malchus already is the identity of creation is important. Why? Because Hashem needs creation to be a melech. So if the identity of creation is time and space and everything having its own time and everything having its own space, in Malchus that all already exists. As opposed to higher than Malchus, in Hashem himself, nothing exists aside from himself. The whole world is kolech shiv, nothing is important. Because before we get to Malchus, before we get to Dibur, it's only about Hashem as he exists within himself, and as he exists within himself, there is nothing other than him.
No time, no space.
So even if there are worlds, but they're only about him. In Malchus, the worlds are about the worlds. In the higher spheres, the worlds are about Hashem. And therefore the differences don't matter, because it's all about Hashem anyways. Let me give you an example. It's a very cute example that I saw in Rabbi Yoel Khan gives this example. I'm not sure if it's his own or if he saw this in other places and said this, but it's a very good example to explain what's going on. Just imagine you have a din Torah. So you have two litigants coming, and it's about a case. At issue here is $100,000. They both argue the case. You have Reuven and Shimon, and each one argues their case. And the Bezdin comes and they paskin that Reuven is correct, and therefore Shimon has to give to Reuven $100,000. A month goes by, and the money yet has not appeared. The check might be in the mail, but Reuven hasn't gotten it. So Reuven goes to Bezdin, he complains, and then the Bezdin summons Shimon. And here you have, imagine this hearing, Reuven is screaming at Shimon, you have to give me $100,000, and the Bezdin is saying, yeah, you have to give $100,000 to Reuven. So here we have something very interesting. We have, Reuven is screaming at Shimon, give me $100,000. The Bezdin is screaming at Shimon, give him $100,000. So it would seem that it's the same thing. They're both saying the same thing. But in actuality, they're not saying the same thing at all. Or even if they are, but they're coming from very, very different places. Because over here, there's two things. There is the halacha in Torah. As a result of the halacha in Torah, Shimon has to give Reuven $100,000. Reuven is telling Shimon, give me $100,000 because it's important to me that I get $100,000. The Bezdin is telling Shimon, give $100,000 to Reuven because it's important that the halacha be followed. So you have over here the cause and the effect. The cause being the halacha, the effect being the psak din. Both people, the Bezdin and Reuven, are both saying the psak din. But to Reuven, it's the psak din that matters, and to the Bezdin, it's the Torah that matters. So the Bezdin, who represent Torah, for them, the result never really left The effect never really left the cause. The only thing they're worried about is the cause. Yes, even when they're saying go pay the money, it's not the money they care about. It's they're caring about the Torah. Whereas when Reuven looks at it, he doesn't care about the Torah. He wants the money. What are and there'll be many differences over here. So for example, the Bezdin, to Reuven, it's very, very important that he won the case. And that Shimon didn't win the case. The Bezdin doesn't care who won the case. It matters nothing. If Shimon would have won the case, they would be arguing with they would turn to Reuven and scream with the exact same way, Reuven, pay the money. Now imagine if Shimon won the case, would Reuven be as eager to fulfill the Torah, to fulfill the halacha? No. Why? Because it's not the halacha that he cares about. He cares about the money. Right. So to the Bezdin, it doesn't make a difference who won, who lost. That's irrelevant to them. The Bezdin also doesn't care whether it's $1 or $1 million. It makes no difference. Think about that. To Reuven, if he won $1, okay, he's not screaming so much. And if he won $1 million, then he's screaming a lot. To the Bezdin, as we say, that the Bezdin, a din of a pruta has to be the same thing as din like a mate. Why? Because the Bezdin, it's not about the money at all. It's about enforcing the Dvar Havaya Zu Halacha. It's about enforcing the Torah. So therefore, although in this particular case, both the Bezdin and Reuven are saying, give $100,000, but where they're coming from is a very different place. From the Bezdin, it's all about the Torah, which is the source, and that even when they're talking about the result, it's still only, we talk about the Oyer HaNichlal, but the Oyer HaShemesh when it's in the Shemesh, right? This is the Oyer HaShemesh in the Shemesh, the Psak Din, from the perspective of the Bezdin, it's still in the Shemesh, it's still in the sun. It's all about the Psak Din. And to Shimon, it left the Makar, and now it is a Metzias for itself. This Psak Din is a Metzias, an important Metzias. He doesn't care about the Makar. In a similar way, when you're talking about from the perspective of the Midos of Hashem, everything is about Hashem. Just like we said, everything is about the Halacha, the Torah, everything is about Hashem. And therefore, just as we said, it doesn't make a difference who wins the case, how much the case is about. All these things are totally irrelevant. Everything in the world, it doesn't make a difference what it is, whether it's 100, whether it's 1, whether it's 100, whether it's here, whether it's there. It's all about Hashem. Just like, regardless of what the Psak Din would be to the Bezdin, it's the same thing, because it's all about really the Torah. From Hashem's Midas, because everything is about Him, when we say that there is no Zman, there is no Makim. There is no, this is now, and this is later, and this is here, and this is there, because the now, later, here, there is only when the now, later is important, the here, there is important. But mitzad the spheres of Hashem, the only thing that's important is Himself. And therefore there is no Zman, there is no Makim, it's all Eined Mulvade. Once you get, however, to Hashem's Malchus, and Hashem's Malchus, that's like, the result is already important over here. This is now Ein Melech B'lei Am. This is about the Am. Suddenly over here, everything begins to make a difference. There is time, there is space. This is this, and that is that, and this is at one time, and that's at another time. So that's why the question that we started off the class with, if you remember, before we were talking about Shem Elikim and Shem Havaya. Now we're talking about Shem Adonai. You have to understand, Shem Elikim and Shem Havaya is all as the Eibishter is within Himself. That's all on a level where Einod Milvade Taka. There is no even. It's all koiches as Hashem is in Himself. Hashem's Chesed, Hashem's Gevura. And then there's Hashem's Malchus, and that's different. And Hashem's Malchus, because Ein Melech B'lei Am. Because the purpose of Malchus is the world, so worlds beferish have a makim. Worlds are important because Hashem needs the worlds in order to be a melech. And then the details of the worlds are important. And makim is important. And zman is important. Why? Because makim and zman represent the differentiation of the different nivraim. If there is no makim, there is no zman, there is no differentiation amongst the creations. And then the Eibishter isn't a king. You don't have bereiv am hadras melech. So legabe Malchus, it's important. You need bereiv am, and bereiv am means I have different types of creations. Different types of creation means different makim. Each one occupies its own space. And the same thing with Zman. So that's why we don't find the idea of the Shem of Havaya or Shem Elikim, we don't find them in terms of Havaya, Hoya, these things. Hashem Melech, Hashem Molech, Hashem Yimlech. Because Melucha is about time. And also when it comes to, we say that Hashem's Malchus is everywhere in the world. Zmanu Makim is only in Hashem's Malchus. Why? Because Malchus is the source of creations. It is the level of Hashem which needs the creations. Because Ein Melech B'Layam. So what we have over here is that within Hashem itself, we have two levels of Elokus. One level of Elokus, which is the spheres of Hashem. Worlds don't exist. When we say, they might exist, but even if they exist, they're only about Hashem. Just like the Bezdin, when it gives the Psak Din, so even though there is an actual Psak Din, but it's not about the money, it's not about the $100,000. It's about the Torah. So when it comes to the spheres of Hashem, there's nothing other than Hashem. The worlds are only about Hashem. And then we have Hashem's Malchus. And Legabe Hashem's Malchus, the worlds do exist. Now, to be very clear, when we say that Legabe, relative to Hashem's Malchus, the worlds exist, Hashem is still the Melech over the world. Just like the Melech, we're not talking about that Chas v'Shalom, that the creations can do something against Hashem. We're not saying Hashem isn't in full control. But still, the worlds have a chshivas. There's Makim, there's Man, the worlds have a chshivas. And now we are going to return to the idea of Yichud Ila'ah and Yichud Tata'ah. If you remember, we started off the Perek. I don't remember, it was the last year or 2 years ago? I think it was the last year. We started off saying there are two levels of Yichud. There's Yichud Ila'ah, which is alluded to in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then there's Yichud Tata'ah, which is alluded to in Baruch Shem Kved Malchusai, Li'olam Va'ed. What is the idea of a Yichud? The idea of Yichud is the bringing together of the Malchus of Hashem together with the higher spheres. And there are two ways where we make this Yichud.
Say it in Tefillin, no? L'Shem Yichud Kudsha B'richu?
It's exactly that. Because L'Shem Yichud Kudsha B'richu is Shechinte. According to Kabbalah, Kudsha B'richu is the higher spheres, and Shechinte is Malchus. And we're trying to make a Yichud, but there are two ways to make this Yichud. Because what we want to accomplish is like this. We want to accomplish that there should be worlds, and nevertheless, Einod Movadeh. The problem is that in terms of the spheres, there aren't worlds. In terms of Malchus, it's not Einod Movadeh. There's chshivas to worlds. Can we bridge the divide and bring together Malchus together with the higher spheres, so that we have this incredible result? There is a world, but at the same time,
It's unity.
in the world is nirgash this idea of Einod Movadeh. In the world, with all of its parameters, it can be sensed and felt this idea of Einod Movadeh. And the answer is yes, and there are two possibilities how to go about this. One is called Yichud Ila'ah, and one is called Yichud Tata'ah. Now, Reb Sasson, you probably, I'm assuming, you daven usually with a Sephardic Siddur, is that correct?
Not all the time.
But sometimes?
Yeah.
So one of the differences in Sephardic Siddurim is that when you have, I don't know if all Sephardic Siddurim, or some of them, but when you have Hashem's name, so you have different letters, right?
Yeah,
So sometimes you have
different size.
the Yud and Yud Ke Vav Ke, and after the Yud there's a little Aleph, and after
Dalet.
the Hey there's a little Dalet, and after the, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you have the other way around. You'll have Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. I don't know if it's in the Siddur. And after the Aleph you have a Yud, and after the Dalet you have a Hey. Ever seen that?
Yeah.
In Kabbalah, these two represent, one is called Shiluv Havaya Ba'adnai, and one is called Shiluv Adnai B'Havaya. I don't know what the best translation for the word Shiluv is, the insertion of, I guess. One is the insertion of Adnai in Havaya, and then that would start with the Yud. When you start with the Yud, so you're inserting the Adnai in the Havaya. That is Yichud Ila'ah, because then you're bringing them both together, but the dominant one is Havaya, which is the higher midas. And then you have the other way is Shiluv Havaya Ba'adnai, which means you're inserting Havaya in Adnai, so then you would start with the Aleph. And there also you have the unity, but over there the more dominant one is the name Adnai is Malchus. And that's Yichud Tata'ah, that is a lower level of unity. So, Bashgacha Pratis, we're right now in the Yontiv of Chanukah, and to illustrate this idea of Yichud Ila'ah, Yichud Tata'ah, actually Chanukah is a good way to illustrate it, because we have examples of both Yichud Ila'ah and Yichud Tata'ah in the miracles of Chanukah. So we know in the miracles of Chanukah there were different types of miracles, and that's why when we say Haner Salala Ona Madlikin, Ala Chues, Vala Nisim, Vala Neflois. So Chues, Nisim, Neflois, we're seeing there's different variety. It's not only that there were many miracles, but there was also a variety of miracles. But the two most prominent miracles that exist that are in Chanukah is, number one is the Nitzachon, the Nes HaNitzachon, the miracle of the Nitzachon of the Milchama, of Rabbi Me'atim and Geberim and Chaloshim, that Hashem delivered the hand into the hands of the many into the hands of the few, and the mighty into the hands of the weak. That was one miracle. And then another miracle that we have was the fact that the oil that was only enough to burn for one day, it burned for 8 days. The obvious difference between these two miracles is that the first miracle was a miracle which is melubish in teva. It was a miracle which was enclosed in the laws of nature, as opposed to the miracle of the candles. That was a miracle which was l'maylam bin derech hatava lagamri. You know, we've spoken about this once. When we talk about miracles, when we say the word miracle, there are two definitions to the word miracle. In fact, if you look in the dictionary, you'll find that there are two definitions to the word miracle. One definition is a phenomenon which is highly, highly unlikely, and therefore it's attributed to divine agency. That's one definition. And another definition of miracle is something which breaks the laws of nature. By way of example, I think I've given this example before. So imagine you have a person who's walking on the street. You have this, let's use the proverbial old lady walking down the street with her shopping bags and her purse, and a mugger comes and pulls out a knife and says, "Hand me over your purse." Now imagine if just as the mugger did it, a meteorite comes falling down from the sky, knocks him on the head, and he drops dead. Now is that a miracle? Definitely a miracle.
Sure.
But I want to give you another scenario. The other scenario is that the mugger comes, picks up his knife, and says, "Your money or your life," and as soon as he finishes saying that, he turns into a slab of stone. Also a miracle, right? But there's a substantive difference between the two miracles. There's a difference, right? Mm-hmm. Although they're both miracles. I think we'll agree that both of them are miracles. The miracle in the first one is there were no laws of nature that were broken. The only laws that were broken were the laws of probability.
What?
The laws of probability. The laws of likelihood.
There's no meteorites that would...
No, that's not true. There are meteorites, in fact. Go look it up. There are meteorites actually that fall on a regular basis. The only thing is,
it doesn't hit.
The Earth is huge, and usually they'll fall in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. At the end of the day, if you're going to have an atheist scientist who will stand over here, if you have an atheist scientist who will stand and will tell the story, he'll say, yeah, the chances of it happening are 0.000. But it happened. It's just like, what are the chances of you winning the lotto? I think it's one out of million. What? It's one out of that. I think especially nowadays, like 1 out of 250, 300 million, right?
Unbelievable.
It's more likely to be hit by lightning, as they say always, than to win the. But at the end of the day, people do win the lotto. They do.
Yeah.
Now, so what does that show you? When something is extremely, extremely unlikely, it still happens. It still happens. So it's not breaking the laws of nature. When something highly, highly, highly unlikely happens, that doesn't mean that the laws of nature are broken. All it means is. And then there's a miracle which completely defies and destroys the laws of nature. I mean, that's, if you look in Yiddishkeit, we celebrate both of these types of nisim. And obviously in Chanukah we have examples of both of these miracles, but take a look at Purim. Purim is a perfect example. We have a whole Yom Tov that's established, and there was no Nes that destroyed Teva. All the Nes of Purim was Melubish B'dar Teva. Now, if you look back at the sequence of events that spanned over 12 years, and you look back and say how everything happened, So it was definitely a miracle, but it was a miracle Mlubish and Teva. Now, then there's Teva, without miracles. Just the normal Teva, you went to work and you made a paycheck, you went to, just Teva, the normal, when a person looks at it and you don't see a miracle at all. Again, in the case of the meteorite striking, you see, there's a miracle. Again, it didn't break the laws of nature, but anyone with a half a brain realizes there was a miracle here. The same thing is with Chanukah, the fact that you had these few, and it's not only few in number, but they were weak. What does it mean they were weak? They were militarily, they were inexperienced, and they were not trained. And the fact that they defeated the mighty Greek army, miracle. But then this in Teva. So when you have a miracle that happens within the laws of Teva, that is Shiluv Havaya Ba'admai. That is Yichud Tata'ah. Teva, after all, Teva is a result of, is part of the parameters of this world. However, sometimes within the parameters of the world as established by Malchus, by Hashem's Malchus, what's nirgash, what you feel, is a oyer that's higher than this world. You feel the oyer of Havaya, the oyer that's higher than this world. And that's what happens when you have a miracle which is melubish in Teva. So on the one hand, you have Teva beferish, and actually that's dominant. In other words, because if you're looking at what's happening, what do you see? You see Teva. But even as you're seeing Teva, and the laws of Teva, the laws of space and time, all of them continue to apply. But what you have over here is a Yichud. You have a Yichud. There's a unity. There's a unity of Havaya, there's a unity of Shem Admai, Malchus, and the higher spheres, and therefore the oyer, which is higher than this world, the oyer of Hashem, is being felt in the experience, even though what's dominant over here is still Teva. That is a lower level of Yichud. So a lower level of Yichud means we exist in a world, and the world has its parameters, and we look around, and the world matters, and everything in the world matters, but at the same time, within the world we're able to feel and sense Havaya, we're able to sense the higher bittul of this world to its creator. And then you have a miracle, which is like the miracle of the candles. I'll give you another example of this. Before we get to the pasuk says, Ki hasheichad ya'aver eini chachamim. What does that mean? Sheichad it blinds the eyes of the wise. It means you give sheichad to someone, you give sheichad to a judge, you give a bribe to a judge. And the problem with giving a bribe isn't that we're worried that the judge is corrupt and the judge will deliberately, therefore, give over a verdict which he knows to be incorrect. We're not worried about that. We're talking about chachamim, we're talking about tzaddikim. The problem is with sheichad is that it compels the person's mind to think in a certain way. So at the end of the day, the judge actually comes up with rational reasons and rational arguments and justifications for why he issues a verdict in favor of the person that gave him the sheichad. Think about that for a second. So when the judge now gives the verdict, what is felt? Is it felt the influence, the real influence behind it, which is causing him to say it? No. You'll read his opinion like, wow, that's a very logical opinion. And there was actually logic being used. But at the same time, what's driving this logic? Is the sheichad.
Slanted perception.
And anyone with a half eye could see that. So what's dominant is the logical reasonings, but what's driving it and what you see driving it is the sheichad. The same thing in this world, you can have what's dominant is the world, the perception of the world, but at the same time you feel the driving force behind it. And then sometimes you have a miracle, like the miracle of the candles, which is Lamayla Maderech Hatava Lagamri, and that's a miracle where on the one hand, does the world still exist? Yeah, we're talking here about physical candles and olive oil and fire. So it's not that the world becomes bottle. You have the world seemingly as a world, but at the end of the day, all the rules of nature have been suspended over here. That is Yichud Ila'ah. That is where, when you look at it, what's dominant isn't this world. Suddenly, what's dominant is l'mayla maderech hateva. What's dominant is havaya. This is something which was constantly felt in the Beis Hamikdash. When Yaakov Avinu, when he slept in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Makom Hamikdash, so when he wakes up, he says, "Ochein yesh havaya b'makom hazeh, yesh Hashem Yudkei Vavkei." Why? Because in when Mashiach comes, the Yichud Ila'ah will be felt everywhere in the world. But a me'ain of that was felt in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is why in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you had an example of this, the famous miracle of Makom Ha'aron Einim Min Amida. We know that the Beis Hamikdash, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was 20 amas by 20 amas, and the Aron, and so in other words, there was a very specific and particular amount of space that the Kodesh HaKadoshim occupied, and the Aron also occupied a certain amount of space, 2.5 amas by 1.5 amas, and it had to be in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So if you measure the Kodesh HaKadoshim wall to wall, it's 20 amas. You measured the Aron, and it's 1.5 amas or 2.5 amas, depending on which side you were. And then, as the Gemara says, that if you were to measure from one side of the Aron to the wall is 10 amas, and another side of the Aron to the wall was also 10 amas. So we have here, that's what means Makom Ha'aron Einim Min Amida, which is a strange thing. It doesn't say Ha'aron Einim Min Amida. It doesn't say the Aron didn't take up space. The space of the Aron didn't take up space. Makom Ha'aron, the space of the Aron Einim Min Amida didn't take up space. Think about that for a second.
You said the Aron was smaller, but it filled up the whole space, you said.
The
Kodesh
HaKadoshim was 20 by 20.
20 by 20, yeah.
Okay,
and the Aron was much smaller.
And the Aron was 2 amas. Let's say 2.5 amas, right? Now, if you put something which is 2.5 amas in the center of a room, which is 20 by 20, so if you're going to measure from one side of the Aron to the wall, and from the other side of the Aron to the wall, how much should there be on each side?
Roughly 7 feet on each side.
8 3/4. 8 3/4 amas on each side should be, right?
Yeah.
And that would leave you with what?
Of empty space.
Yeah. Not empty space.
I mean, from the Aron to
the wall, yeah.
To the wall.
Open space.
You see, the wall was the space of the Kodesh.
The room was 20 feet wide. The Aron was in the middle. The Aron took up 2.5 amas. Yet when you measured from each side of the Aron to the wall, one side of the Aron to the wall, you measured 10 amas. The other side of the Aron to the wall, you measured 10 amas. So the Aron didn't take up space. But the Aron did take up space because the Aron had a very defined dimensions. Makom Ha'aron Einim Min Amida. The space of the Aron didn't take up any space. Talk about Yichud Ila'ah. Again, in the spheres above, in the spheres before you get to Malchus, there is no space at all.
No time, no space.
There is no space. So you can't even talk about Yichud over there. Yichud means the merging of two realities, the reality of our world and the reality of Enid Mulvadeh. So in Chesed of Atzilus, you can't say Makom Ha'aron Einim Min Amida, the space of the Aron doesn't take space. There is no space, there's no space period. There's only the reality of Hashem. And then we have our world, where there is its realities and its parameters. Yichud means, can we merge those two realities? That within our reality, it should be Nirgash Enid Mulvadeh. So Yichud Ila'ah, in Kodesh HaKadoshim, we have that. Yes, we have the world, you have space, you have something that takes space, and yet it didn't take space. So again, Yichud, both of these are that within the reality of the world, you should be able to sense the idea of Enid Mulvadeh. The question is to what degree. Yichud and Tata'ah is a lower degree, whereas the main thing that you're feeling is the world, but you're also feeling how the world is being controlled and directed and is bottled to something higher. And Yichud Ila'ah is that yes, although you're looking around seeing the world, and again you are seeing a world, because otherwise that's not a Yichud. The idea of Yichud is the merging of these two realities. You're looking at a world, but at the same time, what are you seeing and what are you sensing?
No space.
The higher, the Enid Mulvadeh.
Is it dependent on what you're feeling or what you're choosing to see? Is it both?
For most of us, we'll talk about this more as we go along. For most of us, we're not capable of truly tuning into Yichud Ila'ah. For most of us, we'll talk about this, Mitzvah Hashem. It says, Yaakov Avinu said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And the Shvatim answered, Baruch Shem Kved Mechusei Le'olam Vad. There's a reason why Yaakov, he was Yichud Ila'ah, and the Shvatim, even when they agreed with him, they only were able to get to the level of Yichud Tata'ah. It's brought down, I don't know if you mentioned this last week, that the Avos were the Merkava of the world of Atzilus. So Taka, since they were Merkava to the world of Atzilus, the Avos Taka lived on a Madrega of Yichud Ila'ah. The Shvatim, they were Merkava to the world of Bria. In the Beis HaMikdash, there was the Yam Sha'asa Shloima. It's described, there was this kier, which was like a big basin, like a big sea, which stood on Yud Beis Bakar on 12 cattle. And those 12 cattle represented the idea of
what?
12 cattle. There was 12, it wasn't real cattle, it was sculptured.
Sculpture.
Yeah. And those 12 represented 12 Shvatim, and they held up the Yam. The Yam is a metaphor for Malchus. So they're the Merkava which is below Malchus of Atzilus. They're the Merkava which is the world of Bria. The world of Bria, because they're in the world of creation, so if they were, the Shvatim already were not Shaykh to Yichud Ila'ah, they were Shaykh to Yichud Tata'ah. But they were a Merkava. Let's understand that. Merkava means that they were a vehicle to Hashem's will. They were like a chariot to its rider, and Hashem was the rider. But still, they're Merkava of the Elam of Bria, which means that they were Shaykh to Yichud Tata'ah. So it takes a very big tzaddik, a very high tzaddik to be able to live in that reality of Yichud Ila'ah. And for most of us, we try to reach a state of Yichud Tata'ah, but it doesn't mean that maybe there can't be moments of our day when we try to tune into higher reality of Yichud Ila'ah.
Ila'ah Tata'ah is Benoni?
Yeah, you could say so. The reality, the ultimate, we talk about Keil De'es Hashem. Chana says this. She says, Keil De'es Hashem. That Hashem is Hashem that, so to say, he has opinions.
What?
What is a day? Keil De'es Hashem.
Means wisdom, means knowledge.
A day can also mean an opinion, or two viewpoints, two perspectives, right? And Chassidus explained the De'es is Yichud Ila'ah, Yichud Tata'ah. They're both divine perspectives, and it depends on on which level of Elokus. On a higher level, there you have what's called Das Elyon, like Bilam, where Yedea Das Elyon, right? Das Elyon means the perspective from above. The perspective of above is Yichud Ila'ah. And then there's what's called Das Tata'ah, and Das Tata'ah is Yichud Ila'ah. But both of these are holy perspectives, you have to understand them. They're both Madregas and Yichud. One is Shema Yisrael, and one is Baal Shem Tov Library. They're both holy perspectives. But obviously one is a higher perspective than the other, and one is a truer perspective. But we can't all reach that truest perspective because of the limitations of who we are. And let's do inside. We are holding on page Pei Beis where it says Ulefi.
Where is that? Oh, your feet.
14 lines from the bottom. Yes, it's right mamish in the middle of the page. The last words in the line. Ulefi. Ulefi Shemidas. Ulefi Shemidas Malchus Yizbarach Miyuchedes B'Malchus Vasmusa Yizbarach B'Tachlis Hayichud, because Hashem's Malchus is one and united with Hashem's essence in complete unity. Kamashi Yizbarach as explained. In other words, we're talking here, you're saying Malchus is one thing and the spheres above her something else. But at the end of the day, as we say in also in Pasach Eliyahu, Atu the Kasher Leinu Miyachad Lein. All the spheres of Atzilus are all one, are absolutely united with each other. That's what allows the Yichud. What allows the Yichud of our reality, which originates in Malchus, with the reality of Enid Movade, which is the reality in the higher spheres, is because Malchus is miyuchad with the other spheres. Just like, by the way, by us, our speech is miyuchad with us. Hilkach, therefore, gam bechinas hamakim vazman betel mimitzias mamish. Therefore, because Malchus, which is the source of makim and zman, is one with the spheres that are higher than it, so therefore makim and zman also are betel mimitzias mamish lagabe muhusei vasmusei yizbarach. Time and space, both of which are derivatives of Malchus, are also completely bottled to Hashem. Ki bittul eir hashemesh b'shemesh, like the bittul of the sunlight in the sun. This is Yichud Ila'ah. This is the higher level of Yichud. V'zehu shiluv shem adinus b'shem havaya. That is the idea. Shiluv is the insertion. Inserting of the name of Adonai into Havaya. Kishem Havaya Meira Shulamayla Min Asman. Havaya is higher than time. That's why Shuhoya Hoive V'yiyah Berega Echad. The word Yud Kei Vav Kei has in it Hoya Hoive V'yiyah all four, because Havaya is higher than time. Everything, all time is as if it exists in one moment. Commissioner Zbora has explained, Vehaemunah Parshas Pinchas. Vehaemunah, the same thing is also the name of Havaya Lamayla Bechinas Makim is also higher than space. Ki hu mahav v'tamid is called Bechinas Hamakim Kulei. From Havaya comes the existence of the entire concept of space. Milamayla ad lamata, from the highest to the lowest, v'ladal sitting and to the four sides. So that's Yichud Ila'ah. Yichud Ila'ah is that because Malchus is one with the higher sphere, so therefore everything is completely bottled. Malchus and time and space, everything is bottled to the higher spheres. Tahavaya. V'hinei, however, afal pishu hu yisbarach l'mayla mamakim v'azman, even though Hashem, Havaya, is higher than time and space, afal pikein, nevertheless, hu nimtza gam lamata b'makim v'azman, he also exists within space and time. In other words, before we were saying how space and time is bottled, but then he also exists within space and time on its own level. Dahainu, shemisyachad b'midas malchusay, Hashem unites with, Havaya unites with his midah of Malchus, shemimena nimshach, from which derives v'nesaven is created hamakam v'hazman, space and time, v'zeo Yichud Tata'ah, and this Yichud Tata'ah, which is shilov Havaya ba'adnus baruch hu, which is the insertion of the name Havaya in the name of Adnai. Dahainu, this means shemahusi v'asmusa yizbarech, that the essence of Hashem, hanikra b'shem ein seif baruch hu, which is called Ein Sof. Malay is kol ha'aretz mamish. He fills this world. Again, before we were saying how the world is bottled to Hashem. Now we're saying He fills the world. In the language of Yichud Ila'ah, we talk about how everything is bottled to Hashem. Space and time is bottled. In the language of Yichud Tata'ah, we talk about how Hashem fills space and time. Malay is kol ha'aretz mamish b'zman ha'makim ki b'shamayim mal ba'aretz l'dal sitrin. Because in the heavens above and the earth below and to all four sides, everything is equally filled with Erin Saf. That's the truth. In the earth down here below, just like it is in the heavens above, everything is bottled to the Erin Saf, which is mislabish in it, through the midas malchus and yichadus by Yisbarach, which is united with Hashem. It's only that malchus is the ability of Hashem to contract and to hide lahaster Erin Seif Baruch Hu, to hide the Erin Saf, so the space and time don't become completely bottled from their parameters. Because if so, then there wouldn't be any space and any time, even over here in this world. So that, my dear friends, is Yichud Ila'ah, Yichud Tata'ah in a nutshell. This is it's obviously very, very deep concept, and we only scraped the surface. I think I might have mentioned this, that we had a few weeks ago. We had the birthday in Yartzeit of the Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Baal Tanya, the son of the successor, and the Mittler Rebbe. He said that his biggest wish is that when two Chassidim bump into each other on the street, the topic of discussion should be Yichud Ila'ah and Yichud Tata'ah. So now you guys know how to fulfill that wish. And obviously, again, there's so much depth to this, and we're just talking on the simplest levels possible. And this is talked in Chassidus, talked about in Chassidus over and over in different languages, in different words, in different terms, and with different explanations, and to try to imbue it within us, this idea of Achdus Hashem, whether in this way or the other way, understanding that Einad Movadeh. Anyway, Chanukah, everyone, and we'll continue Mir Hashem next week.